Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Stan, and I'm back again to talk about some more Magic the Gathering old school killer decks. This time I'm going to be talking about the sixth most dominating old school deck called the Rack Balance deck. This was another Type 1/classic deck that made its appearance around winter of 94, and it was around till about spring of 95. This was another deck that proved that the Bizarre Baghdad does not suck if you use it the right way. The Rack Balance deck was a deck that was red, white, and green, and it uses the balance as a Mind Twist, Wrath of God, and Armageddon all rolled up into one badass 2 casting cost card. Now let's take a look at the recipe. Now, using the Bizarre Baghdad and a lot of quick casting cost spells like Chain Lightnings and Lightning Bolts, you can get your hand size down quick, fast, and in a hurry. And then once you are comfortable, you go ahead and you drop the balance, which would pretty much destroy all of your opponent's cards that he had in his hand, thus denying him the resources that he needs. And usually, it was always time to drop the balance when you saw your opponent get his hand back up to about 7 cards or so. The original recipe for the Rack Balance deck doesn't have a Howling Mind, but if you actually put a Howling Mind in here, this would help you destroy your opponent's cards even faster, due to the fact that he would have to draw more, thus he would refill his hand back faster, and then you would just drop the balance again and destroy his cards and get rid of all of his resources even quicker. There have been several times that when playing with this particular deck, you can actually force your opponent to deck himself. Now, I said that this was called the Rack Balance deck. Another key point to this deck was the rack. If your opponent has fewer than 3 cards left in his or her hand, during his upkeep he gets dealt 1 damage for each card he has fewer than 3. So not only does this deck destroy your opponent's resources, but it punishes your opponent for not having the resources in his hand, which your opponent doesn't really have control over anyway. Ruthless. Now this deck brought a lot of much deserved fame to Adam Maisnet, which was the 95 Southeastern Regional Champion. This deck pretty much helped him dominate the entire tournament scene using a not so typical method of library manipulation and raw speed. By using the Bizarre Baghdad's disadvantage as a benefit, this deck was able to stomp out pretty much all competitors that came his way. This was one of the first decks to utilize the balance as a power card due to the fact that a lot of people back in the day were considering white cards to be weak cards. After this deck hit the scene, this made a lot of people reconsider white cards, because the brutal effectiveness of the Rack Balance deck pretty much made a lot of players out there, usually the ones that pretty much laughed at white cards in tournament play, reconsider the value of playing white cards. When it comes to the weaknesses of this deck, besides this deck being expensive, the other weakness that I see with this deck is, well, if you meet up with somebody who has a lot of protection from white cards. Protection from white is what you really need to watch out for. Without that balance, half your deck's potential is negated. Or if you meet up with somebody who actually has a deck faster than yours, that could be a problem too. But with this kind of deck, that's a very rare occurrence. Alright guys, that's all I got to speak about in regards to this deck. It's one of my favorite deck strategies of all time, the Rack Balance deck. This comes in at number 6 of the top 10 most dominating decks of the old school. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'd like to thank you for watching. I'd like to thank all of my fans. I'd like to thank all the source material for helping me come up with the original recipe. And don't forget to comment or vote. Anyway, I'm Stan, and that's all for now.